You all know those videos. The best deck to get to infinite. This deck will get you to infinite quickly. Even here on my own channel, you see me call out in my titles and my thumbnails decks that I played on my own infinite journey that I thought brought me the most success in that month. In a way, none of these videos are entirely dishonest. That being said, they also don't generally always tell you the entire truth, my own videos included. And part of that reason is people don't want to hear the entire truth. People want a quick answer that they think is going to get them to the rank that they want to achieve. In the case of Marvel Snap, the infinite rank. So, what is that answer that they don't want to hear? Well, the answer is the deck that you're playing in Marvel Snap is not the most important thing when it comes to getting to infinite. That's very different than other card games. As someone who's played Magic for 2 decades, the deck that you're playing is very important if you're looking to be successful. What makes Marvel Snap different, you ask? Well, the cube system. Marvel Snap is the first and only card game that I've ever played or am aware of where you can have a win rate less than 50% and still call a deck successful because of how the cosmic cubes work. On the Marvel Snap ladder, not every match is equal. Some of your matches are worth 8 ladder points, and some of your matches are worth a single ladder point. And if you understand how to leverage the snapping and retreating mechanic, you can get more from your wins and lose less from your losses with good play. If you're coming from another card game like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, maximizing your experience under the cube system for laddering forces you to unlearn some very critical behavior. And the first is that retreating is not the same as conceding a game in any other game. Retreating is a loss mitigation tactic, and something that I often hear from newer players is they feel like their deck or cards aren't good enough and they need better cards because they're retreating too frequently. I don't have that problem. I have all of the cards, and I'm playing what I often feel are optimal deck lists. What do you think my retreat rate is like playing mostly optimal deck lists? Well, we don't have to guess. I can show you. Using my Snap.fan tracker, we can see that in my almost 11,000 games of Marvel Snap that I've played, I retreat in almost 27% of them. It's also worth noting that as I'm making content, I frequently call out on my live streams that I'm staying in a game that it is explicitly bad to stay in for the sake of letting my content show how the game is playing out organically. If I was looking to purely minimize and maximize my cube rate so I could win more and climb the ladder better and faster, I would be retreating more than this 27%, even with my optimal decks in my full collection. You can even see here, as a comparison's sake, my opponents retreat far less than I do. My opponents retreat almost 3% less than I do, in fact. That's a big differential. In my opinion, the number one thing that players need to do better when it comes to Marvel Snap is recognizing when they are beat and retreating appropriately to mitigate their losses in those circumstances. That leads us into the next common follow-up question, which is, Jeff, how do you get better at retreating? And there isn't a quick answer to that one. The truth of the matter is, knowing when you should be retreating and when you should be pushing your strong hand requires intimate metagame knowledge. The reason for this is Marvel Snap is a game where the decks are hyper consistent. A player is 75% to have any card in their deck by the 6th turn of the game, meaning if your deck is relying on a particular big play, you're incredibly likely to have it. This means knowing what the output range of your opponent's big plays are critical because they're going to have those best plays more often than not. Meaning, in order to retreat appropriately, you need to not only be familiar with what your deck is capable of, but you also need to be familiar with what your opponent's deck is capable of. You then need to be able to calculate what their deck is going to be able to do on the board with their best possible play, and then also figure out how your deck can interact with that or scale up against it, and if you're a favorite or not to win, to then know if you should be pushing, staying in, or retreating appropriately. This is not a skill that you can acquire just by watching a couple of YouTube videos or copying the right deck list down. It's a skill that takes practice, and it's going to take losing and struggling as you grow and learn. An anecdote I like to share about my own personal Marvel Snap experience is that I didn't reach infinite for the first 2 months I was playing Snap. I was just having fun, growing my collection, and playing lots of ladder matches, and more importantly, learning about what other people were playing. Every time I walked away from a match, down cubes, but up knowledge, I felt like I had accomplished something. I felt like I was prepared for something else in the future that wouldn't beat me the second time. I would be ready to know that, oh, the card that was played out of this archetype could be played again in the future, and I should factor that into my considerations and if I should be retreating in that given matchup. It's been almost 7 months now since the closed beta started, and I hit Infinite most months now, but I'm also not hyper-focused on it. My attitude is still the same as it was in those first 2 months, with the goal of learning from the games that I play, and sometimes the outcome of that is my cubes and my ladder rank go up during a play session, and other times it happens that my cubes and my ladder rank go down. One of the key things to note too is that learning how to snap and retreat is not just something that you know and then you're done with it in Marvel Snap and you always do it appropriately. When you should be pushing your limit and when you should be cutting your losses is something that often varies deck list to deck list. So if you're someone like myself that wants to change decks a lot, this is going to be a skill that you're going to have to relearn as you look to master new decks that you are picking up and playing with. I know it's easier said than done for a lot of people because the fear of missing out when it comes to those rewards on the ranked ladder can be tough to overcome. But remember, Marvel Snap is a game that you should be playing for fun. And it's a great game that's a ton of fun. There's sweet ways to read what your opponent could be having and leverage that in a very satisfying manner, but you're also going to get leveled back in spots and your opponent's going to get you with something you're not expecting and try to let go when the cubes go and try and be happy when they come in and not tie your enjoyment to an arbitrary mark that you're climbing to on the ladder. In the grand scheme of things, the currency that you get from climbing to the very top of the ladder is pretty minimal compared to the rewards that you're getting from just your weekly and daily missions. If your goal is to progress your account, make your goal to be to complete those every single day and then farming boosters for your favorite card or optimizing your favorite deck or figuring out something else that's a sub game that brings you joy other than hyper focusing on something that you may or may not be ready to achieve. And so long as you make your goal be learning and improving, eventually you will make it to where you want to be. To close with a tidbit on why I decided to put this video together and post it now, you may have noticed that my last 2 deck highlight videos included the hook, "These decks help me get to infinite." And that's true of basically every deck I've posted on this channel. I try to only post decks that I feel are reasonable and successful, or if they're not successful, I explicitly call them out as such that they're just doing something novel. That being said, because those couple of decks presented that idea that we talked about at the very start of this video, they were a fast track or a shortcut or an easy way to make it where people wanted to go, they got a lot more engagement than my other deck videos. And as much as it kind of makes me roll my eyes to say, I'm probably going to be including mentions of Infinite in most of the decks that I play here moving forward because I end up having success with most of the decks I play on the way to Infinite or inside of Infinite simply by understanding the cube system. I guess my goal of this video is to just kind of put some energy out there and hopefully encourage people to think about how they can actually get to the goal and that place that they want to be, as opposed to just looking for the shortcuts that deck videos often imply or explicitly promise in some cases. At any rate, thanks for making it all the way through to the end. If you enjoyed my musings, please tap that like button. There was a particular one that jumped out to you. I'd love to hear it in a comment down below. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. I post Marvel Snap tidbits like this, as well as game news updates and deck highlights here 7 days a week. I'd love to see you back around again sometime. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks.